Hi, I'm Nuan from AWS.
Hi, I'm Ryan from Mission Cloud, and this is my architecture.
Ryan, tell us about Mission Cloud and about this architecture that you have developed for one of your customers.
So Mission Cloud is a premier AWS partner, and all we do is AWS. We have professional services, and this particular project falls under the data analytics and machine learning practice, which I run. And so I'm super excited to talk about our customer, Magellan TV, and their architecture we see here.
Can you walk me through the user story here? What is the user's journey through these different AWS components?
Absolutely. So Magellan TV is a documentary company that has thousands of hours of documentaries, and they work with a lot of different distributors, right? And so what they're looking to do is take their library and do content localization across the globe. And so what happens is the different distributors need different number of hours of content per month. And what they're trying to do is automate that process so that they can create the content that's needed for the distributors. So what happens is a distributor will tell them, hey, we need X number of hours of content per month, right? So that user is then going to figure out, hey, what content am I going to get ready? And they figure out how many hours, drop that into S3, and that's where the path starts, right? So now you have AWS step functions over here that's going to orchestrate across the rest of the infrastructure as we're going through, moving that data into each piece. Now that file, one of the first steps is it's split out into all of the different speakers so that you're looking at, each speaker as a different, just as a different JSON. And that's going to hit translate, and you're going to start the translation process, right?
I can understand you're using step functions to orchestrate as you talked about. I assume you're doing the same thing in the middle of the architecture as well to stitch together the Bedrock. Let's zoom into the ML pipeline here. How are you using Bedrock to achieve the translations?
Yeah, so we take that file and we look at a lot of things, right? We pass it into Bedrock to pull out all the idioms, in the English language. And so you got to do an idiom and slang detection to do basically an English to English translation, right? Once you have that English to English translation, you now look at translating it to the other language. And when you look at languages, you've heard people talk, some languages are much longer than others. And so you have to do sentence shortening. That way, we're in the documentary, we want to make sure that we're going through and keeping all of our timing windows, right? So you got to do a sentence shortening. And then from that step, now you're looking at, okay, what region am I going to? Is there any specifics in that region for grammar or content or anything else that could have sensitivities? So now I'm doing, basically a cultural check at the end with Bedrock as well, so that I can have that final piece. And so that, I've now gone English to English, shortened my sentence, and dealt with cultural pieces that could present issues and get that documentary ready.
I can see Amazon Poly, Amazon Augmented A2I. How are you using these components?
Yeah, so from Bedrock, right, we just have essentially the scripts. So now we take those scripts and we use Poly to do text to speech. So now I have the speech files, and from that I pass it into A2I where my translator can now look at it and do quality checks, right? So at the beginning of the process, that translator is using this A2I quite a bit as we try to work through any kind of cultural issues. And then once you have that set and you really go into production, you're just kind of doing spot checks here and there on the data to make sure that everything's still performing.
So where does the final output land?
Yeah, so then at the end, right, we're going to drop everything into an S3 bucket. There's the video files, there's the sound files, and then you also have, a translated file in case people want to use closed captions.
Got it. Got it. Ryan, I can see in the top of the architecture, you put CloudFormation as a component. How are you using CloudFormation to automate this batch process that you explained?
Yeah, absolutely. So it takes about 1 minute to do the processing for every 1 minute of the video. And so you can imagine if you have multiple distributors that want, a couple of hundred hours of video each month, that you have to break this out into multiple nodes, right? So we have this pipeline written in CDK, then when it instantiates, it uses CloudFormation to spin this out into a bunch of nodes so that you can then work through all of the video you need to do content localization through each month.
What were the few things that your customer was excited about this design and the architecture?
Yeah, some of the exciting pieces of this design, right? Right now, they were kind of working with some third-party services. It costs them about $20 a minute to get this done. And then with this, it's about $1 a minute. So previously, you know, it would cost, you know, close to $5 million to do the library, where now it's much cheaper per language. And so they're looking at, okay, I can do more than just one language, right? I can do a lot of different languages because of all the power of the AWS services that they have going on.
That's awesome. Ryan, thank you for diving deep into this architecture. I really enjoyed our conversation.